All right, ready to dive into this whole startup visa thing. We've got a stack of articles here ready to dissect. Hopefully, we can help you decode the system and dodge some of those hidden gotchas that nobody tells you about.
Yeah, it's a real journey.
A journey is right. And like any good adventure, you need the right map and the right gear. So think of this deep dive as your pre-trip briefing.
I like that.
We'll break down those visa requirements, tackle those swirling cost rumors, and hopefully save you some stress along the way.
Sounds good. Let's do it.
Okay, so this first article really caught my eye. Navigating the Canadian Startup Visa Program, a journey through the stages of enlightenment. It's like they read our minds. It maps out that emotional roller coaster so many people go through when considering this program.
Yeah, those emotional stages are spot on. Uncertainty, overwhelm, maybe even a little bit of denial along the way. It's not just about paperwork, right?
Totally. So let's break it down. Say you're at the very beginning, just starting to dream about this whole Canada plan. What's going on in your head?
Well, the article calls that first phase stage one, the search begins. Kind of like staring at a map with a million pins in it.
Yeah.
Okay, Canada, but how do I even get there?
Right.
And you quickly realize that those big programs like Express Entry, great for some, but maybe not for everyone, or those provincial nominee programs, they sound enticing, but the requirements can be tough depending on your skills.
It's like choosing your mode of transportation, backpacking versus a cruise ship. Both can get you there, but the vibe is totally different.
Exactly. And that takes us to stage two, evaluating the options, which is where things can feel really overwhelming. You're drowning in acronyms, ICT, PNP, SUV.
Yeah.
It's enough to make anyone's head spin. This is where having a guide who speaks the language is invaluable.
Speaking of which, can we decode one of those acronyms right now? This article keeps mentioning LMIAs and these pre-approved ones that sound a little shady. What's the deal with those?
You're right. Let's clear that up. LMIA stands for Labor Market Impact Assessment. Basically, it's proof that an employer in Canada needs to get, showing they couldn't find a Canadian to do the job they want to hire you for. And those pre-approved LMIAs, they might sound like a shortcut, but often they're too good to be true. Lots of risks there. Best to avoid them altogether.
Good to know. So back to our enlightenment journey. You've navigated the acronym jungle, dodged some dodgy shortcuts. What's next?
Stage three, making the decision. And let's be real, this is where things get serious. You found your path, the startup visa program, but then you see the price tag, and suddenly you're hit with a serious case of sticker shock.
The article mentions costs, but it doesn't really paint a picture. Give us the reality check. Just how big of a financial commitment are we talking about here?
Well, think of it this way. An ICT work permit, we mentioned that one earlier, that can set you back over $120,000 USD in the first year alone.
Wow.
And that's just for the work permit, not even your living expenses. And here's the kicker. It doesn't guarantee you can even apply for permanent residency.
That's a hefty price tag for so much uncertainty.
Exactly. Now, some people explore buying a business. The article mentions New Brunswick. But you're often looking at a minimum investment of $250,000. And again, no guarantee of permanent residency. So while that startup visa fee might seem intimidating up front, it's arguably a more predictable investment in your future.
So it's more about getting on the right path, even if the initial steps seem pricey.
Exactly. Plus, with the startup visa, you're not just getting a visa, you're getting plugged into a support system. Think incubators, startup consultants, even access to pre-approved projects.
It's like having a team of Sherpas guiding you up a mountain.
Perfect analogy.
I'm starting to see the appeal, but what about those common concerns people have about the startup visa program? Things like, what if my team falls apart? Or what if I pour my heart and soul into this and still don't get PR?
Those are valid fears, and honestly, any program that tells you there's zero risk probably isn't being entirely truthful.
Okay, so let's talk about those fears head on. What does this article have to say about navigating those potential pitfalls? Okay, so let's talk about those fears head on. What does this article have to say about navigating those potential pitfalls?
Well, let's start with that whole what if my team falls apart? Fear. The article really emphasizes thorough vetting right from the get-go. Background checks, verifying experience, really making sure everyone's truly on the same page.
It's like laying a strong foundation.
Exactly. Minimizes the risk of those messy founder breakups down the line. And for those worried about, building a team when you're not even in the same country, the article highlights this fascinating model called a startup studio.
Okay.
So imagine, like a company specifically designed to bring together co-founders from different places. They help you build that foundation, even if you're starting miles apart.
Okay, that's pretty cool. But even with a solid team, what about the time commitment? People have lives, they have jobs, and some of these programs promise like a super fast track to PR. How does the startup visa measure up in terms of like actual timeline?
You are right to be wary of those too good to be true timelines.
Yeah.
And the article actually explicitly warns against anyone promising PR in less than 12 months.
Red flag.
Huge red flag, especially with business immigration. Time frame, 2.5 to 3 years.
Okay.
It's not a sprint, it's a marathon.
Right.
And part of that journey is proving your commitment to, building something substantial in Canada.
But like the difference between a quick trip and actually putting down roots, right?
Exactly. And speaking of risky shortcuts, remember those pre-approved LMIAs we talked about earlier?
Oh, yeah.
The article calls them out again here, emphasizing that they can actually totally derail your whole immigration journey.
Yeah.
Financially and in terms of, those long-term goals.
Yikes. So what's the takeaway here? How do you avoid those pitfalls and make sure you're on the right track?
It really boils down to don't cut corners. Work with experienced professionals who understand, the intricacies of this program. They might cost a bit upfront, but they can save you from making those costly mistakes down the line.
It's that ounce of prevention thing.
Exactly.
Okay, we've covered a lot of ground here, from emotional stages to financial realities, those potential pitfalls. But let's cut to the chase. After this deep dive, is the startup visa actually a good option?
That is the million-dollar question.
Yeah.
And the article doesn't give a simple yes or no answer.
Fair enough.
Which I appreciate. It really depends on your individual circumstances, your goals. It's not one size fits all.
Right.
But it does highlight a few key factors that can really make or break your success.
All right, let's hear them. What are those make or break factors for the startup visa? All right, let's hear them. What are those make or break factors for the startup visa?
They kind of boil it down to three main things. First one, genuine intentions. It sounds obvious, but are you truly passionate about your startup idea?
Right.
Or is this just like a means to an end?
Yeah.
Immigration officials can spot a disingenuous application a mile away.
They've got a sixth sense for it by now, I'm sure.
I wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah.
The second thing is strong partnerships.
Okay.
We touched on this earlier, but that whole vetting your co-founders,
Yeah.
absolutely crucial. And it goes beyond just checking resumes. You need that shared vision, complementary skills, that real sense of trust, especially when you're building a company from scratch in a new country.
If you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together.
Exactly. And that brings us to that third factor, realistic expectations. Going into this knowing it's a marathon, not a sprint.
Right.
There will be hurdles, paperwork, probably some moments of doubt along the way.
Sure.
It's a process.
Right.
Embracing that is really crucial for success.
It's not just about checking boxes. It's about demonstrating that genuine commitment to building something in Canada.
You got it. The startup visa program, they're not just looking for businesses. They're looking for builders, innovators who really align with Canada's entrepreneurial spirit.
I love that. Well, wow, we covered some serious ground here today. From those initial, what were they, emotional stages of exploration to the nitty-gritty of costs, timelines, potential pitfalls. We scaled a mountain of information here.
We climbed to a pretty great vantage point, that's for sure. But remember, this is really just the beginning of the journey. And there's always more to explore, especially with something as, complex and constantly evolving as immigration.
Exactly. We've given you the map, the compass, some essential gear, but the real adventure begins with, your own research and reflection.
Absolutely. Take the time to really understand those motivations, your resources, your own risk tolerance, and don't be afraid to seek out, those expert guides to help you navigate those trickier paths.
Couldn't agree more. And here's something I want you to ponder as you continue your research. The article we discussed today really stressed the importance of genuineness in your application. So I'm curious, what do you think makes a startup idea truly genuine in the eyes of immigration officials? Think about it. Until next time, keep those questions coming and happy exploring.